Welcome back to Turn Up the Volume, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories and strategies shaping a more inclusive and equitable audio industry. I'm Nayo Anya, your host and audio equity champion from the Yorkshire Sound Women Network. Today, we're focusing on workspace culture, Strand 2 of our Volume Up framework. We look at how it impacts everyone and how we can make our spaces more respectful, supportive, and truly inclusive. This is the second episode in our series, where we explore these key strands of Volume Up, each one designed to create a more inclusive, supportive, and equitable industry for all. Workspace culture isn't just about what happens in the office or the studio. It's about the environment, attitudes, and values that shape our day-to-day experiences. It's about feeling safe, supported, and respected. Yet research shows that many women and minority-gendered people in the audio industry face challenges that make it difficult for them to thrive. Considering that a 2023 survey found that nearly 60% of women in audio reported experiencing some form of discrimination or bias at work, is shocking. These numbers are even higher for people from minority gender identities and backgrounds. But the good news is that by addressing workspace culture, we can start to turn these numbers around. Today, I'm joined by 4 incredible guests who are not only navigating these changes and challenges, but are also leading the charge by creating their own spaces. And it's not just about creating these spaces, it's also about being open and honest about how we feel when we're actually in them. Nali shared some really important insight on this.
Something that I've got better at doing is admitting when I'm feeling anxious or not trying to hide it and be overconfident and then feeling really uncomfortable because I'm actually not comfortable at all with the situation, and just talking to the people, because a lot of the time other people are still feeling the same things that you are as well, and if you voice it and you're able to talk to people, you don't feel so alone with those feelings as well. You feel much more comfortable in a space if other people know the way that you're feeling. It's something that I used to really, really struggle with, because I have quite bad anxiety, or I used to really, really struggle with things, and the hardest thing would be actually turning up. A lot of the time I'd have these incredible opportunities to be in certain places, and then I just wouldn't go. I'd be planning to go the whole time, and then an hour before the event, that would be it. I would be I can't go, and then I wouldn't go. I try not to be too hard on myself in those times, because I feel if I really felt that badly about it, I probably would have really struggled to be there. But the more that I've pushed myself to actually go out and take up those spaces and be in those places, a lot of the time, pretty much every single time, it's been really fun and I've had an amazing time. And I think the more that you expose yourself to that, the more you realise actually, even though you're really anxious about it, you're gonna have an amazing time. It's gonna be great. So just really pushing myself to actually go and be places.
Next, I spoke to Isabel from Girls Twiddling Knobs, who shared how she created her own space that accommodates her needs, particularly around ability.
What does it feel like when you're in one of those slightly less welcoming spaces? It feels like you're always on the outside and everyone's always waiting for you to slip up. There's been a lot of presumption about what you already know. And if you don't know those things, then again, there's a lack of respect. And an awful lot of emphasis put on already knowing things, and a lack of tolerance of people asking questions, wanting to explore ideas. I always say, this doesn't just disadvantage women and non-binary people in terms of gender. I've talked to young women in music production and music tech courses where the male students in the class have asked them the night before to ask the lecturer questions because they've been too embarrassed to ask in front of the other male students. It's really systemic. And while I think it is changing, I think particularly in more kind of organised traditional music tech education spaces, it's still really prevalent. And that's all cultural, We really need to start talking about changing that culture rather than expecting women to magically feel confident in that space. During my PhD, I released multiple albums, and towards the end of that period, I first got tinnitus and then I got really bad chronic pain. And after a few years, it became evident that a music career and an academic career was going to be really basically impossible, because neither of them are particularly set up for supporting or integrating people with chronic illnesses and disabilities. That's a big generalization, but that was the reality I was kind of looking at. What is now called Girls Twiddling Knobs came out of that, where I felt that I had a lot of different skills and experiences and knowledge to integrate into an alternative type of music tech education for women that was more holistic, that was more kind of feeding in the qualifications I'd kind of then received in things like counselling and coaching, with all of the experimental sound training I'd had in my PhD, with all of the kind of more conventional music production experience I'd got as a musician. And it kind of all started coming together very, like I said, very gradually into something that was just more under my control and something I could build myself, in certain ways healing, dare I say it, from chronic pain, although I don't really like that kind of it feels a bit ableist, but like integrating and somewhat healing from chronic pain over the years. So much of that creativity and making and learning, that has given me so much agency for finding a route through that as well. So that's another reason why I look back on those experiences of self-recording, self-releasing, doing a bunch of different things, the unconventional route. Then when I've been put in situations that are beyond my plan, and what many of my peer group have been going through, those skills, those experiences have really come into their own in a way that is, very powerful.
Do you think from those kinds of experiences of doing things in a bit more of an unconventional way, or knowing how your brain works or knowing how your body works or changes, that has given you agency to be able to direct your working environment in a slightly different way as well? As in, if you're working with people, if you're working with a collaborator, if you are deciding what your schedule is going to be looking like as a business owner, do you think these things come into your mind when you're thinking about how to set those things up or how to put some boundaries in place?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've created a career now, which is very much in my own space, on my own terms. So I can't really speak for someone who is collaborating every day and going into collaborative situations all the time. But yeah, I think I'm more confident now and more mindful about where my boundaries are, what my energetic limits are. I think I was always reasonably good at that, but I think I would have a lot of internal conflict doing it. And I think I have a lot less internal conflict doing it now. It's even like really simple things like just deciding at the beginning of the year when my time off is going to be and sticking to it. Because as a business owner, as a freelancer, it's really easy for that to just get completely swallowed up, and to feel like anytime someone asks you to do something, you've got to say yes to it. And I think I've got better at just being more aware of the space I need and the buffer zones I need in order to keep enjoying. It's not even just about, because on a basic level, yeah, don't burn out, but to even just keep enjoying what you do. It's so easy for it to become so relentless and complicated and exhausting, because there's a huge amount of heavy lifting in making something happen in the world that comes from your head. And I think that, as artists, we can understand that. As business owners, we can understand that. For a lot of people who haven't ever done that before, people really take it for granted that it's hugely exhausting and stressful doing it. So I've learned over the years, and I now feel a lot less conflicted about kind of insisting on this. I have buffer time and I have space, and that's just a non-negotiable.
Isabel's point about this need for a certain type of knowledge is something that we've seen time and time again. In our own YSWN Wired research, which was put together after working with young people in higher education settings, it also highlighted that fear of asking questions, because there's a potential to look foolish and it holds people back, especially those who are already feeling marginalised in that space. This currency of a certain type of knowledge is a barrier to learning, growth, and inclusion. This fear isn't just about lacking a so-called knowledge, it's tied to the very culture of our workspaces and what we respect within those spaces. I spoke to Xylo from Music Production for Women, who spoke about why she set up her spaces in the way that she did.
There's a very clear holistic side to the way that you're teaching. It's not just about, here are all the buttons, here's all the technical stuff. There's also, how is your imposter syndrome doing? How is your mean voice doing? Like, how are you doing? And there's something for me in that workspace culture side of things of actually, it's not just about output. It's also about how someone is and actually how we keep ourselves sustained within an industry and actually own up to those feelings so that we can look at them, so that we can move through them. Were you clear that's something that you wanted to embed within your practice, that kind of culture?
Definitely. I am not sure actually when I made that decision, but I feel like it's always been part of MPW. I think a big part of it is because with empowering women, we do have to talk about this stuff because often we are our own worst enemy where we're saying, I'm not a techie person, or I can never learn this stuff, or, who am I to do this? So I felt like we couldn't have a teaching platform for women about production without addressing some of this stuff, because I know that that was probably my biggest challenge, even more so than the technical aspect of it. So I felt like it had to be woven into everything that we do. And we do in our social media and our emails and everything that go out. A lot of it is about this kind of thing on how do we overcome those mental barriers.
Recognizing the blocks that people have in order to thrive, whether that be their own sense of what they can achieve or whether that's been feeling not completely comfortable within a space. What Xylo is doing by addressing it is a really fantastic example of how we can rethink our spaces to reflect the people who are actually going to be in them. Laura, who set up Saffron Records, shared her experience of feeling like a minority within these spaces. This feeling isn't just about numbers, it's about the culture, the environment, and how welcome or unwelcome you feel within it.
In those initial stages, in the first 2 years, when things are just wild, when you're setting up, don't know which direction you're going in, and then to now see us nearly 10 years later, running things, got an amazing team. We feel really solid. We feel really like we know what we're doing. We've got a really good reputation. And I think if I was to kind of look back in those first 2 years and think about being 10 years old, I'm not sure I could have seen the vision so much.
Well, that's why we love hindsight.
Why
we love hindsight. There's effort put in to get people on the stage. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of effort to think about who's in those behind the glass roles and who, like you say, are the sound engineers and the producers and actually the whole side of the industry that makes the experience rather than just the person who's on the actual stage.
Yeah, totally. And I think when I first started Saffron, it was the DJing. That was the thing that, that was easy. People really wanted to engage in that. And I think looking at how that worked, you're able to then see someone DJ and you're able to go, okay, that can be me. I can go out into that space and I can do that. Little bit harder with production and producers because they are a bit more behind closed doors, but I guess there's people that are doing that, in that live space a bit more that we're able to see. Whereas sound engineers, that's in a closed space, you're not able to see them, you're not able to see yourself, and actually going into that space is so intimidating if you are a minority within that space.
Feeling like a minority is something that deeply resonates with many, especially those who've had to carve out their own spaces just to feel that sense of belonging. According to Black Lives in Music, 36% of Black music professionals believe their mental well-being has declined, with this figure rising to 39% among Black women. This is a stark reminder that our workspaces are not just professional environments, they're deeply personal ones too. Carla Marie Williams, founder of Girls I Rate, has spoken powerfully about her experiences. She said, "I was young and I was a woman. I was black. They thought I should be singing. What am I trying to do here at this table, having all these opinions like, know your place, know your role?" Her words highlight how damaging a toxic workplace culture can be, especially when it reinforces harmful stereotypes and limits the potential of others. Sometimes it's hard to even realize the effect of the words that we're saying, especially if we're around a culture that has never questioned that before. So where do we go from here? If we're serious about creating a more inclusive audio industry, it starts with transforming that workspace culture with understanding and awareness, as we mentioned in our last episode. And that's why we set up the Volume Up standard. The next milestone is all about creating this respectful work environment for everyone. It means committing to a culture with dignity at the forefront. It may be that you could pledge towards writing and implementing a dignity at work policy. Or it could be making a really clear complaints and grievance procedure and making sure that everybody who comes into the space knows what they can do to keep themselves protected. But it's important that these aren't just policies that are put on paper, that they're foundational steps towards building a culture where everyone feels valued. As our Wired research pointed out, everyone experiences and engages with spaces differently. Showing that you understand and respect these differences is key to creating a truly inclusive environment. So, those are just a couple of ideas of the pledges that you could put towards your workspace culture actions. This pledge is your company's promise to prioritise every corner of your workspace. And this is just the beginning. With the Volume Up standard, we'll be checking in with you after 18 months to see how things are going on, celebrating your progress and helping you to set new goals moving forward. I would also be there, or anyone else from YSWN, to actually help you go through your pledges and think about how you can challenge yourself to do something differently. We're here as your partners, and we've put this together because we want to turn up the volume on creating a space where everyone can thrive. If you want to learn more about workspace culture, please explore resources from Black Lives in Music and check out Girls I Rate. And of course, check out the YSWN's Wired research on inclusive workplaces. And in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out, sign up, and take that step towards a more respectful and inclusive workspace culture. In the next episode, we'll be looking at working practices, the third strand in the Volume Up standard. Thank you to all our incredible guests, Laura from Saffron Records, Silo from Music Production for Women, Isabel from Girls Twiddling Knobs, and Gnarly. Make sure to go and give them a follow on all their social medias and support the great work they do to continue pushing for gender equity. Thank you also to Rosa UK, a grant-making charity that funds women's and girls' organisations working to make the UK a fairer, safer place, without whom we wouldn't have been able to create this podcast. I'm Nayo Anya, your podcast host, scripter and director, and audio equity champion at YSWN. Thank you to our editor, Joe Kennedy, and Sarah Statham, who has provided the music, both of whom are YSWN associates. To find out more about what we do, head to our website, www.yorkshiresoundwomen.com. See you next time.